Hello, and thank you. I want to go ahead and thank Ricky for reaching out to me and or returning a phone call. Um, you are tuned into You Have a Collect Call from, and please welcome Ricky Black. And we're gonna go ahead and get into his to his life story. So last time we spoke, or actually on the last video that I uploaded, I noticed that I overlooked some questions. So we're gonna go ahead and answer those questions, or Rick is gonna answer these questions live. So we were talking off of the air right now, and I realized that we left, or I left off, or I didn't ask the questions where when you went to prison the second time. So you went to prison the first time, and you did 4 years. Then you came home, and then obviously you went back to prison for a second time. So what happened when you got out of prison for the first time after you were sentenced to 4 years?
Well, I got out to nothing. I got sent to prison at when I was 19 years old, and I wound up getting out when I was 22, and I wound up getting out to nothing. My family wasn't in my life at that time, and those people that were in my life are still involved in that criminal lifestyle. So when I had gotten out of prison the first time, I basically moved right back into the same.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Surrounded myself with the same people, with the same friends, and I continued down the wrong path of committing crimes. But this time, the crimes that I started committing was a little bit more uh, violent than the crimes that I was doing as a teenager. I wound up I got involved with carrying guns and robbing drug connections when I got out of prison. And the reason I got involved with stuff like that was because the older guys that I had been incarcerated with, was talking about the easier way to make money was to rob drug connections. And it was the way that I always looked at it was like, well, I'm not robbing a store, I'm not robbing a bank, I'm just robbing another criminal, so it was okay. And so that's what I was doing. I was setting up drug dealers in my neighborhood with a girlfriend of mine, and just robbing any drug dealer I could find. It didn't matter what kind of drugs that they were selling or how much, and I was knocking them off, and that's how I was supporting myself. And I eventually robbed this guy uh, for a little bit of money and a little bit of drugs, and the cops were called, and they came out, and I was arrested. And I was, like I said, I was 22 years old at the time, really full of myself. I didn't have any responsibility. I was irresponsible. I didn't care about who I was taking advantage of or who I was hurting. I wasn't even worried about like my own sense of safety or future. I was just living in the moment. And for me, living that fast life with no responsibilities, at a young age, like it was exciting. Honestly, it was exciting. And going back to prison or suffering the consequences for crimes that I was committing really didn't mean anything to me at a young age like that. And I know a lot of people at that age are just starting their careers in life and things like that. But my career was being a criminal and being a gang member and having as much fun as I could. And ultimately, when I got arrested, the girl that I was with, her child actually was put into some Shalimar or something like that because we all got arrested at her house, and her mother had to come get her daughter because we were arrested. And so there was a lot of there was a big impact, for the crimes that I was committing at that time. And at 21 years old, I didn't even understand the consequences of that or even the impact that I was having on my girlfriend and her daughter at the time. And I wind up going to court and receiving a 3-year sentence. And I wind up taking a deal so she would be released from the county jail and go get her daughter and get her life back together. And so I took a deal for 3 years to hurry up the process. and I wound up coming back to prison. And it was during that time, coming back to prison, that I wound up meeting some more serious gang members here in prison, and I wound up becoming affiliated with a prison gang. And so life at that time took on a different turn for me, because at a young age, not only was I impressionable, but I was influenced by older and more sophisticated criminals and gang members. And because I had looked up to them, these are my role models that I looked up to, I wound up engaging in a much serious activity. And ultimately is what led to my life crime.
Sorry, I had my microphone on mic. I was over here struggling, trying to unmute it. So if it takes me a moment to respond to you, it's just because I have it, the mic and unmute, just because to avoid any type of background noise or whatnot. So I have two questions right here. So the first one is from La
Yeah.
Analyst or LA Analyst, and then they're asking, how old were you when you first robbed?
The first robbery I committed, I was 16 years old.
And was this
And
with
the reason, go ahead.
was this with a firearm? Was it strong arm robbery, or what kind of robbery was it?
It was a strong arm robbery. It was a strong arm robbery where, in order to join the gang, I was asked to go in this house and rob a lady who had a bunch of money, who just received a bunch of money. And at 16 years old, I was told that I had to do it by myself in order to join the gang. And so this was one of the initiation processes that I did. And that's what I did. I entered the house. The lady was home by herself, robbed her, took her money, and I wound up leaving. And I gave the money to my older homeboys who put me up to do it. And that was the initiation process, one of the initiation processes to joining the gang that I was involved in.
Thank you for answering that. And the next question was or is from L Iceman, and he's asking, I missed the part on how he picked up his life sentence. Where can I find it? Which part? I'll go ahead and answer that one, just because it was
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I overlooked that on my end over here, and I didn't ask those questions. So we're actually doing a live just for that. So if you're here, then you're gonna capture this live. And if you have any questions, like I say, feel free to go ahead and ask. And once we have a pause or the right moment comes along, I'll go ahead and ask your questions. And so I'll go ahead and hand it back to you, Ricky.
Okay, so after I received my 3-year sentence for the robbery, I wind up doing about 2 years on that sentence. And after getting out, I continued the lifestyle that I was living, and I wind up getting violated on parole and went back to prison. And I got validated as a prison gang member in 1998. And during that time, I had met some very serious individuals that gave me a hit list, and they wanted me to take care of these individuals once I left prison. And because I was obligated as a gang member, I said absolutely that I would do that. And I wind up discharging my number, my E number, which I initially had. And in
You have 60 seconds remaining.
1999, I was discharged from prison, from Corcoran Shoe, and I went back to my hometown, which was Bakersfield, California, to fulfill my obligations to the gang members that I was now connected with. So I'll call you back right now, and then I'll continue the story. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that, Ricky.
Okay. One sec.
Okay, and for anybody just joining us now, we are actually running this live. So unfortunately, these calls are they are they're metered or they have a limit. So after 15 minutes, or right before the 15-minute mark, you get a prompt from the famous GTO lady right there. She notifies you that the calls are about to be disconnected within 60 seconds. And once that happens, it'll automatically cut you off after the 60 seconds without any prompts or whatnot. But you should be ready for it. So we should be connecting shortly. It shouldn't take that much longer. And there we go. We're ready.
This call is now being recorded.
This is Global Tel Link. You have a prepaid call from
Ricky Black.
an inmate at the Centinela State Prison, Centinela, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
All right, Ricky, and the mic is all yours.
Okay, so I left off leaving Corcoran Shoe in 1999, discharging my number with a hit list of about 6 individuals on it. And the main individual was a young man actually, who was about 23 years old, a young father who had a child himself, a young daughter who was 3. And I was in charge of making sure that he didn't disrespect the prison gang any longer by his behavior. And it was a personal vendetta that one of the gang members had towards this guy because it involved his family. And being a gang member myself, I felt obligated to help him out in any way that I could. Even in taking somebody's life, I thought that was okay. As long as I was going to get the respect and recognition from the gang, I was willing to do anything at that time. And so after just discharging my number, that's exactly what I did. I went and met some friends of mine who were already out. They already knew about the situation. We conspired and set this guy up who was 23 years old, and ultimately took his life at a park for some more beliefs that we had at the time. And being a gang member and wanting to be the shot caller in your neighborhood, that's what I aspired to be. I wanted to run my neighborhood. I wanted the control of my neighborhood. And I knew by engaging in this activity, it would put me, a step above everybody else. I would have more responsibilities. I would have more respect. I'd get more recognition from the gang prison. And ultimately, I would have more power and control of not only my life, but other people's lives. And so I was willing to take another man's life for that. And ultimately, that's what I did. I wound up taking this man's life. And I just want to say that a lot of people was hurt by my decision. It was very selfish of me. I didn't understand at the time, or I didn't care about the impact it was going to have on his family, the pain and trauma that I'd put him through, the pain and trauma that I put his young daughter through, not growing.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I didn't think of the ripple effects that my crime was going to have because I was so committed to the gang life that I thought, well, this guy messed up. He has to come in, and I'm the authority to take care of it. When in fact, that belief was all wrong, and I realized that today. I destroyed a family, and not only did I destroy a family, I impacted an entire community, and I also impacted the taxpayers who still pay for my incarceration today. Not only are they paying for my incarceration, but they pay for my prosecution as well. And so even the taxpayers 23 years later are still paying for me to be in prison for the things that I've done. And this family that I hurt 23 years ago, they still wake up every single day mourning for their loved one, sorry that he's not there, grieving for him. And I understand that today. It's not something that I understood, back when I committed this crime. But now that I've changed my life and I'm no longer a gang member, I realize the impact and magnitude that I've had on so many to this day. But ultimately, I ended up getting arrested on this life crime for the murder of this young man. And I wound up going to the county jail, and I was sentenced to 2 life sentences, one for the conspiracy of murder for this young man, which I received 86 to life, and an additional sentence of conspiracy to assault him, where I received 36 to life. And while I was out of prison for 6 months, I wind up assaulting another man and was got an assault with a deadly weapon for that charge. And I was ultimately sentenced to that one too for an additional 25 to life. All 3 sentences was ran consecutively under the 3 strikes law. And then in 2002, my appeal was granted, and I went back to the county jail, and the conspiracy for murder was thrown out of court for prosecutorial misconduct. And ultimately, today I'm sentenced to 2 life sentences, both of them which is under the 3 strike law.
So I have a few questions. The first question would be, how old were you when this incident transpired?
29. I was 29 years old.
And then the second question would be, the gentleman that ultimately ended up losing his life, was he part of the same group that you were part of, or and exactly what was it that he did that would warrant his death?
Yeah, he was a gang member as well. And what happened was he got in a relationship with another gang member's niece, and this gang member had more clout than the rest of us. He had a higher ranking, right? And he wanted this guy to stop beating up his niece, and because he took it as disrespect, like, hey, you know who I am, why are you beating my niece up? That didn't make sense to him. And this guy was 23 years old. He had never been to prison. He didn't understand, the impact of what he was doing. He didn't understand that the prison gang could reach outside of prison and take his life. Didn't know that his life could be in danger. He was just naive. He was young. He didn't know. A lot of us had been to prison knew. We knew the dire situation that this guy was in, and he was told several times by several friends, even his sponsor at the time who sponsored him in the gang, that he had to stop beating up this girl. Otherwise, there was going to be a hit put on his life. And he didn't heed the warning at the time. He was too young. He was full of pride, and he didn't think he needed to listen to anybody, and he wound up still beating up his girlfriend. So when I went at meeting this guy, who I've known his family, this gang member I'm talking about in prison, I've known his family my entire life. We're all from the same town. When I met him in Tehachapi SHU, which was a Tehachapi Security Housing Unit, I was real aware of who he was. He knew who I was. And he asked me, hey, why is this guy still beating up my niece? Doesn't he know who I am? Doesn't he know that what can happen to him? And I said, yeah, he does. He's been told. And he goes, so why is it still happening? Why isn't anybody dealing with this situation? And I said, man, as far as I know, I knew that it was supposed to be resolved already. And he said, well, it hasn't been resolved. And he knew I was getting out in a couple of months. And he asked me, he said, hey, can you make this stop? Can you take care of this and make sure that this doesn't happen again? And I said, listen, I'll do everything I can, And as a gang member, I felt obligated. I felt responsible that these were my duties as a gang member to take care of this for this man. And so that's exactly what I did. I went out, I gave this man my word that I would do it as a gang member, and I followed through with it. And at the time, I believed in it. I thought it was okay. I was like, this guy's beating up a young girl who was 16 years old at the time. And I thought, hey,
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
it's just okay. I can do this. I'll take the law in my own hands. And so ultimately, that's what happened. He was putting his hands on a young woman. And her uncle happened to be affiliated with one of the most notorious gangs in California prisons. And sadly, I have a lot of remorse for him and his family today that he had to lose his life in this way. But that's the reason why.
So once you get out of prison, you start, or before you come home, are you planning, exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to handle the situation, and how are you going to make contact with the victim?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I already knew. I already knew the situation. I already knew who was out. I already knew other gang members that was out, that were waiting on me to get out. And so I knew where the guy lived. I'd been to the house before. So and once I got out, I called my friends, set up a couple of meetings with them, put our plan in place of what we were going to do, how we were going to get him away from his house, and just set the whole thing up in motion like that. And when you get into the this kind of crime, you're not really thinking of an exit plan here. You're just looking to accomplish your mission. And so that's the only thing that I was worried about, was getting out, meeting my friends, other gang members, putting things in motion, and taking care of this as quickly as possible. That was the only thing that I was worried about. I didn't want this to continue any further or any longer than it had to. So I got right out, and I think it was 6 days after I got out that we wound up taking this young man's life.
And how did you make contact?
I initially went to his house and spoke to him in person, and just to gauge the situation, see him and see his girlfriend, see their daughter, and kind of assess the situation for myself. And then I contacted his sponsor, who sponsored him into the gang. I got in contact with him, met him over at his sister's house, wind up getting in a fight with him, checking him real hard and letting him know that this should have been resolved a long time ago, and it didn't have to come to the point that it's at now, to where this young man's, his life's in danger. And I told him, that, hey, you're a big reason why this has to happen. You're a sponsor. This is, you're supposed to school this guy. And so wind up contacting him, telling him exactly what he needed to do, and told him that, hey, that his life was in danger too, that he had to step up and, resolve this issue, because our gang was being looked at like we weren't with the business, and we're allowing this girl to get beat up, and, it's making us look bad. And that's what I told the guy's sponsor. He agreed that he needed to resolve the issue too, and we wind up sending one of our younger homeboys who wanted to join the gang too to take care of the situation. And they wind up, the guy's sponsor and this young recruit of ours wind up driving over there, making contact with the guy at his house. He jumped in the car with him, and they went driving to the park, which was right down the street, about a quarter of a mile. And got out, and they started fighting, and a knife was pulled out, and he was stabbed in his heart one time, and wind up dying right there at the park.
Okay, so we do have a few comments in the chat.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
I want to go ahead and share with him before this call is disconnected. So we have Aquatic Amigo. He's saying much respect to the speaker. He sends his. And then we have El Iceman, which is asking a question. Which prison gang did he run with? I know his dad was Native. And if you want, we could go ahead and you could go ahead and terminate the call, and then just call me right back, and then you could think about how you want to answer that question.
Okay, no problem.
All right, perfect.
I'll call you right back.
Thank you, Ricky. All right, I appreciate you guys actually participating in the chat. That's gonna help out tremendously, helping to help this channel grow. Like always, these calls are disconnected, unfortunately, after 15 minutes, and he should be calling me back shortly. It shouldn't take that long. And once he calls me back, then he could go ahead and answer El Iceman's question. So just hang in there, and we'll go ahead and move forward shortly. And this would be technically part 5, because I did skip this on our original interviews, and there he is.
This call is now being recorded.
This is Global Tel Link. You have a prepaid call from
Ricky Black.
an inmate at the Centinela State Prison, Centinela, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
All right, Ricky, we are live.
Okay, so I think the question was asked, what gang was I affiliated with when I committed this crime?
That is correct,
And
Ricky.
that's a question, right? I was a member of the Nazi lowriders out of Bakersfield, California, and I am half Native American and half Irish. And I grew up Native American, was raised Native American by my father, but I grew up in a white neighborhood, and I wound up hanging out with other white kids, and ultimately at 16 years old joined the gang, joined the Nazi lowriders. Wound up going to CYA, the California Youth Authorities, doing the same thing in NYA. I was affiliated with the Nazi lowriders and the Youth Authorities, and then when I came to prison, to California prisons, I was also affiliated with them as well. And when I ultimately committed this crime, I was affiliated with the Aryan Brotherhood, and this crime that I committed, I was asked by them to commit. I'm not sure what the second question was. I don't remember. But was there a second question as well?
No, he was just asking which prison gang did you run with, and he just made a comment saying that he knew that your dad was Native American or Native.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we have another. Go ahead.
Yeah, my dad was Native American.
Thank you for answering that. And the next question is going to be, they're asking, let me see, Digler _ Bolin is asking him if he's ran into anyone from Baldwin Park.
I'm sure I have. I'm sure that I got ex-friends from or associates from side of town as well.
Perfect. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and continue with the interview. And I want to go ahead and thank everybody for their feedback and appreciate it. And hopefully, we continue growing together. And you guys go ahead and you guys are seeing this channel. It's only been out for a month, and hopefully we'll help some people, some youth, some adults, or anybody that's kind of going through anything that's either prison related or going through things in their life. And hopefully these conversations kind of spark something in these individuals and help them get through these tough times that they're going through. So you commit this murder, the victim gets stabbed in his heart. What do you do next, and how are you eventually apprehended? How do the police figure out that you were involved in this murder?
Well, that's a good question. That was a good question because I wasn't at the wasn't at the park when the murder happened. I was as it said in the police reports, the shot caller who called the shot to have this young man's life taken. So I wanted to be receiving a phone call from associates of mine who said, "Hey, he's been killed. He's, they told me what park he was at." And my immediate feelings and reaction to it was my heart just jumped in my throat. I couldn't, for some reason, I couldn't rationalize that this guy had been killed, even though I'm the one that set a gang member to stabbing. I didn't even, I'd never been involved with a murder at that point in my life. And, I was so naive and ignorant to the finality of what I was involved in and what I was doing, that when I heard that he'd been killed, it was almost like out of a body experience for me at the time. And because I knew, I knew the impact that it was going to have in my small community. I knew what it meant for me and my family, and I knew what it meant for him and his family, because he had a young daughter too who was 3 years old. And all of those emotions at one time hit me, and I realized that, I'm playing for keeps now. There's a lot going on in my life. And I knew I was going to be arrested. I knew I was involved in this murder. So the first thing that I had to do was distance myself from this crime as much as I could. I had to put on that mask, with everybody in my little town, that I had nothing to do with this. I just got out of prison. What's going on? When in fact, I was at the center of this whole thing. And also, I had to lie to my girlfriend. I had to lie to my mom and my family, about my involvement in this. The more that I kept from people, the safer I was and the safer they was. And that's how I looked at it. And as a gang member and a criminal, you don't want to talk about your crime with anybody. You just want to say, hey, I don't know anything about this, because my freedom was on the line at the time, and that was important to me. Even though this man's family was suffering, and they were hurt and grieving and traumatized because their son had lost his life, I just carried on with my life.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I was working out of town, so I left town, and I was working out of town and saving my money up, because I knew, once I was arrested, that I was going to have to get an attorney. So I was saving my money to, for my eventual, court fees and things like that. And so I was basically living a life on the run. And at the time, I was supposed to be getting custody of my own daughter, who was 8 years old, who was in a foster home. And I thought it was better to be a gang member and taking care of business for my gang instead of looking out for my own daughter and taking care of her. I put the gang first. And that's really one of the messages that I want to kind of convey to anyone who might be in a gang or contemplating dropping out of the gang. One of the things that I realize now is that my value system was way out of whack. I should have valued my family first, but instead I was valuing the gang first, valuing what other gang members thought of me, and obligated myself to go out and commit a murder for another gang member. That's where my value system was at the time. And I had a warped belief system, and I thought this was okay. Like, this is how we live our lives, I'm a criminal. I'm a gang member, It didn't matter what I did or who I hurt. It didn't matter that I put my family last, because that's what I did. Not only did my victim's daughter grow up without a father, my daughters grew up without a father too. I've had contact with them, and we have a relationship now. But, in the beginning, things are rough. I could only imagine how his daughter, she didn't have any contact with her father. And I can only imagine what a 15-minute conversation between her and her dad today would mean to her and her family. What they might give to have a conversation with him today. Fortunately for me, I'm able to talk to my family and repair the damage that I've done. But, when you're in a gang, the gang comes first. That's who you're married to, and that's what your life's about. It's all about the gang. And 23 years ago, that's what my mindset was, and that's what I valued.
Thank you for answering that question, Ricky. So you're getting prepared, because something's brewing and something's eventually gonna come your way. So you're saving up money. Why didn't you leave town? Why didn't you get out of Dodge?
Well, I was convinced that nobody was going to tell on me. I was a gang member.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
There were other guys involved in the crime. I didn't think they were going to testify on me. I didn't think when they got arrested they were going to point the finger my way. And also, I was going through the process of getting custody of my daughter. So I didn't want to just completely leave California. I was just working out of town, saving my money. And I would go visit my daughter every Tuesday. So I didn't want to ruin that. Also, the contact that I did have with her, because I valued that. I valued seeing her on every Tuesday when I could, and so I didn't get completely abandon everything, because I had that false hope that nobody was going to testify on me. If everybody got caught, they would hold their mud and they wouldn't point the fingers in my direction. Well, that's not what happened. When the individuals got caught for this murder, they pointed the finger right back at me and said I'm the one that called the shot, and they were just taking orders from me. And ultimately, a warrant was put out for my arrest, and I was arrested. I should have took responsibility right away. But at that time, with the mind frame that I was in, the belief system that I had, it was, catch me if you can. And that's what happened. I wound up getting caught and wind up going to court and being found guilty for a crime that I did committed, and I am responsible for taking this young man's life. And there's no justification. Being a criminal and a gang member is no justification for taking another man's life. And, I know early on, I thought, well, he was a gang member, he had it coming. But just because you're a gang member, that doesn't give you permission to take somebody else's life. And today I'm profoundly remorseful for all the pain and trauma that I caused to his family, and for taking his life, because he had infinite potential, just like everybody else. And so I just want to say that.
Thank you for answering that, Ricky. So eventually you get picked up, and when you get picked up, do you know Do you know what you're facing, or did you think it was maybe a parole violation or something else, or once the cops come knocking at your door or whatever way they apprehend you, do you know the severity of the case you're going to be facing?
Yeah, I knew they had went to my boss's office and wanted my job location. What job did he send me out on? And if he didn't give them my job location, they were going to report him to the Better Bureau of Business and report him for being involved in a murder. So he wound up calling me on the phone and telling me I had to leave the job site, that I couldn't work for him no more. Told me the detectives were at work, were at his office, wanted my employee file. So I wind up, I had to come back into town, and I wound up contacting an attorney, an old attorney of mine, and I was setting up arrangements to hire him. And so I came back into town to square things away with my fiance at the time, who was pregnant. Wanted to square a few things away with my family, and in that process, I wound up getting arrested at a motel that I was staying at. Put a false name, had somebody else rent the room for me, but still I was apprehended. They came to the room and apprehended me, and wind up going to the county jail facing murder charges. And I knew that
You have 60 seconds remaining.
charged for his murder, but I still thought I was going to beat it. You know, I thought, oh, I didn't kill this guy. The guy that done it, he's gonna say he done it, and that was my plan at the whole time. So.
All right. I know the call is about to drop like always after 15 minutes, and
Yeah.
you want to go ahead and give me a call back?
Yeah. I will. All right.
All right, I'll be
See you in a
waiting.
minute.
All right, thank you. And as always, these calls are only limited to 15 minutes, and he'll be calling us back shortly, and we'll continue with the interview. And if you are watching this live, don't forget that you can actually interact with this gentleman. And well, if you do have any questions, I'll go ahead and read them off to you. And I do see that there is one pending question here. As soon as he gets back on the horn here, I'll go ahead and read off this question.
This call is now being recorded.
This is Global Tellink. You have a prepaid call from
Ricky Black.
an inmate at the Centinela State Prison, Centinela, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tellink.
All right, Ricky, thank you for calling back.
You're welcome.
And I do have a question here from one of our listeners here. And LA Analyst is asking, being away from your daughter so many years, how has that affected the relationship? How close are you? How close are they to you now?
Yeah, it's put a massive strain on our relationship over the years, and it's much like a roller coaster ride. You know, there's some days or some months that you have your highs, and there's other times that you have your lows. My daughter at the time was 8 years old in a foster home, and I was getting custody of her. So when I was convicted for this crime, she was adopted out, and during that process, in that foster family, some things happened to her, and that's something that I'm also responsible for, because I wasn't there to protect her or to keep her safe like a father should. So, that's something that you know, impacted her in her life because I wasn't there for her. And, ultimately my wife wound up getting custody of her and bringing her back home. And, we developed a relationship over the years, but we've had a tough time. It hasn't been easy, and it's not easy today either. Uh, there's still strains and stresses, and there's the pushes and the pulls that every relationship has. My daughters don't like to come visit in prison because when they come into prison, they're treated like criminals too. They got to worry about what they wear, their dress, uh, and they're just coming to see their dad when they come see their dad, and they're being scrutinized. Like they're some kind of criminal. And there's been a lot of times where my daughters have come in, both of them crying because of how the prison officials treated them out front. And so today, they don't live in California. One lives in Tennessee, the other one lives in North Dakota. So my relationship is strictly by FaceTime on the tablets and phone calls. But even in that, it's not at the level that I want it. I want a better relationship with them. I want to be in their lives. I want to help them out during their tough times. And, we can have great conversations, over the phone or on FaceTime, but that only does so much. So they've lost a lot. They've lost a lot of me being in their lives, and you know,
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
my oldest one's 33 and my youngest one's 23. My 23-year-old has never experienced me being at home with her like my oldest daughter has. So my oldest daughter, tells my youngest daughter how I am as a person and as a father from what she remembers of me from a young age. So a lot of times my oldest daughter has to fill in the gaps for my youngest because my youngest really only knows me from prison visits, phone calls, and video visits. And, you can build a relationship up like that, but that bond that a child has with their parent is something that has to be made with your physical presence being there. And that's something that both of my daughters have lacked over the years and even today. Like I love them so much, it's ridiculous. But how can you show them that affection and that love if you're not in their life every day, physically hugging them and telling them, looking them in their eyes? So it's very stressful.
No, thank you. Appreciate you answering that question. And we have one more question from El Iceman, and he wants to know if your brothers are currently incarcerated or are they out on the streets?
One of them is incarcerated, and one of them's on the street.
All right, thank you. So let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and continue with the interview. Please show up at your boss's place of business or work site, and then your
Yeah.
boss notifies you, and then, so the cops are they're looking for you. What's your next move?
It's when you're a gang member and you have this inflated ego, you think everyone's going to be there to help you. Doors are going to open for you, and everyone's going to help you, in your, grand escape. And I could tell you that's not the way it works. Doors were shutting on me. No one wanted me at their house because the cops had been by looking for me. They were arresting people. They were doing parole sweeps. They did 22 parole sweeps on 20 different locations, arresting people and violating their paroles, just so they could find me and my associates, so that we could be arrested for this murder. So as I came back into town, I certainly couldn't go to my wife's house. I couldn't go to my mom's house, and so I came, like I said, I came in, I contacted an attorney, and my plan was to turn myself in. but no one wanted me at their house for a couple of days until that actually happened. And I'm sure they probably didn't believe I was going to turn myself in, but I wasn't going to run and leave my daughter in a foster home all by herself. That wasn't going to happen for me. And so I was getting things situated, but again, no friends or anybody wanted me to come around them. And looking back, I can understand that. But at the time, I didn't. So I wind up having one homegirl of mine renting a motel room for me for a couple of days until I got organized. And 2 days later, the cops knocked on the motel door. There wasn't much I could do at that point. So I just opened the door and I was arrested.
So you get picked up, or you turn yourself in, or you turn yourself in, or did you get picked up?
I was arrested.
Okay, but you had the intentions of turning yourself in, right?
Right.
Okay. And so you get picked up. Cops knock on your door. What's their approach, and do they start trying to question you, or do you ask for a lawyer as soon as they throw the cuffs on you? How did it play out?
The funny thing about that is they asked me for my ID, and I gave them my ID. And they ran my name, and it says that I had a bench warrant out for my arrest for conspiracy. And, there wasn't no, drawing the guns and get on the ground or, this felony stop or anything like that. I think we were all kind of I know I was, kind of shocked that the conspiracy. I didn't know what my charges were at the time. All I know is that they were looking for me for this murder. And when they said conspiracy, they said, "Yeah, you got a bench warrant out for conspiracy, $100,000 bench warrant." I was like I said, I was shocked. I was dumbfounded, really. So they didn't ask me any questions or anything like that. I didn't get the detectives coming down to the county jail to talk to me or any of those things. The internal, the IGI that's here in prison, who was involved in the case too. Was already talking to the guys that was testifying on me, and they didn't come down and speak to me either. No one showed up wanting to talk to me, and I was just booked in the county jail like a regular guy, and I wind up being put in the hole once I got to the holding facility, which is called pretrial. They put me in the administrative segregation unit and segregated me from the main population. And I was isolated there, throughout my trial.
So you took your case all the way to trial. Were they offering you any type of so-called deals?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They offered me 50 to life. And that was the deal that they offered me. And I was, I'm not taking a deal for 50 to life. I wasn't going to take responsibility for killing this man. I was this big tough gang member that, I didn't do this. You don't have no evidence on me. And I wasn't ready to take responsibility at that time.
And during your incarceration in the local county jail, what's the atmosphere like? You're there. You have some pretty heavy charges, and how is it there? Do people recognize you? Do they know, what kind of work you put in for your organization? How are you received by your peers in the local lockup?
Well, I was isolated. I was isolated, and I was put in an administrative segregation. And in my county jail, they have a pod. They're called pods that where you're behind glass, and there's only 2 cells in this pod where I was at. And in front of the pod, there's this. It's called like a bullpen, where you got this glass that goes in front of the 2 cells, and it's just those 2 cells in that area. And then there's dividing brick walls in between the other cells. or there's another 2 cells, and then another brick wall with 4 cells. And in the front of these cells, it's plexiglass, and then a plexiglass door. So I was isolated from the main population. I wasn't able to. The only people that I could talk to was Hispanics. No, I wasn't around any white guys.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Put in my pod for fear of influence, that I might influence them in some way. So the only, my only contact at that time was other Hispanic inmates, and that was it.
And what about what's the situation like when you're going to court? Are you also being isolated when driven, or I'm not sure what the setup is in
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
your county?
So typically, you're put in a transport van, and those of us that's in an administrative lockup, you're put in front of the van, or the front of the van or bus that you're on, and there's cages in between you and the main population. So really talking to anybody or seeing anybody is really hard, especially where I'm from Bakersfield. And then once you get downtown to the courts, you're put in holding tanks by yourself. So there's nobody around, there's nobody you could talk to or yell to or sign language to or any of those things. You're completely isolated, and the cops really have a view of your holding cell that you're in. So there's not a lot of communication going on at that time. And nor do you want to communicate at that time, because you're trying to be as quiet as you can and fight your case as quietly as you can, and hopefully beat your case, right?
So during these court proceedings, during the discovery and whatnot, uh, did they hand over all the evidence they had against you, and did you know who was pretty much speaking up on exactly what happened, and who was pointing the finger at you?
Yeah. I knew right away, because the 3 guys that was actually at the scene at the park when this happened, they had all 3 been arrested.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
The guy that actually did the murder was being held. He had already been convicted for 2nd-degree murder. He already pled guilty to the murder himself, and he was in Wasco State Prison in Ad Seg, and I knew he was there. I had sent him money from the streets, and I was in contact with him a little bit, so I knew he was there amongst other associates of mine. The other 2 guys were downtown being held in isolation as well, who were testifying against me at the time. So, yeah, I being said, and who was saying it.
And was it all 3 of them that ended up turning against you?
No, the guy that did the murder actually testified on my behalf, and the other 2 associates at the time.
All right, so the call was automatically cut off, and he should be calling us back shortly. So just stay tuned, and we'll go ahead and continue with this interview. And once again, during these brief moments of I guess there would be silence if I wouldn't be speaking. So if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask them. And the perfect time for me to ask these questions are when he calls back, instead of asking them in the middle of the interview. So we'll go ahead and wait for him to call back, and he should be calling back shortly, and we'll go ahead and get on with the show. And I want to go ahead and thank everybody in here, especially LA analyst, or La Analyst. She is being very, very proactive here, and throwing some good questions here for our guests here today.
This call is now being recorded.
This is Global Tel Link. You have a prepaid call from
Ricky Black.
An inmate at the Centinela State Prison, Centinela, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Okay, Ricky, thank you for calling us back. And you're in the middle
Yes,
of
sir.
speaking when she rudely cut off our call.
Yes, I was telling you, you asked the question, did I know who was speaking against me? And I did. I had a good indication of that by the first two guys that were arrested. And then the guy that actually did the murder, I had already been receiving word from prison where he was at. And he was actually asking me, sending me messages of what he wanted me, what did I want him to say. And so he wound up testifying, coming in testifying on my behalf, saying that he had done this murder on his own volition. No one put him up to do it. And, unfortunately, at that time, I didn't want to take responsibility and take ownership of my part in it. And so I let this man, take the rap for it. But the other two individuals that was a part of it, they wound up testifying. One of them was put in a witness protection for, I think, a year or so. And the other one wound up cutting a deal to not be, wound up testifying to not be any charges being brought against him on the crime.
So the two people that were held accountable was the actual person that committed the murder, and yourself for your role
Yep,
in actually putting in for this murder to take place.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
The
thank
other
you.
two, unfortunately, who was involved in it got off scot-free thanks to our justice system. They were just as culpable and responsible,
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
but they got off scot-free for their testimony.
And those two other gentlemen, do you know anything about them? Do you know if they actually took the opportunity and actually changed their lives, or did they end up
No, no,
they didn't
neither
change?
one of them ever changed their life.
Oh,
No,
okay.
neither one of them changed their life. They continued doing the same thing. I would hear stories of, guys from the neighborhood would get locked up and come in, and I would hear things, or my daughter's mom would hear things, but neither one of them ever changed their life. And as far as I know, they're still out there living that destructive lifestyle, still involved with drugs and gangs and whatnot.
And
Not gangs per se, but criminal activity.
and the gentleman that committed the murder, you said that he went ahead and testified on your behalf. Does that
Yeah.
affect did that affect him, or does it affect him negatively in the prison world, even though he was trying to help you out of your situation, or it's a non-issue?
No, no, it's a non-issue. He was fine. I've actually done time with him. A few years ago, I was in Tehachapi prison with him, and he wound up getting he got 16 to life, and I'm sure that he should be going to board. He should be going to board too. He probably went to board already, and I know he changed his life as well. And I haven't heard if he's gotten out yet or not, or anything, but he should be going to board as well.
All right, thank you for that. So I do have two questions from our listeners here. I'm gonna go and ask them right now. So the first question is gonna be from LA Analyst, and they're asking: being isolated, did it affect you mentally in any way?
Absolutely, absolutely. Uh, there's you become very resentful and angry at mankind, at other human beings that would wish that kind of isolation upon you. And you're even today in prison. You don't have, you have these six senses. Your sense of smell, what you hear, what you see, the things that you feel, your taste buds. You have all these senses that as a human you have, but in here I can't use them. So what's happened in isolation, what happened to me, and what's happened to a lot of guys, is you become your hearing becomes very sensitive, because I can't see nothing outside of the wall in front of my cell. And so you depend on your hearing a lot of times. And so loud noises, even today, now that I'm not in isolation, still impact me. So if you was to stomp your foot or clap your hands behind me, I'm probably going to jerk. If there's a loud noise around me, it's going to draw my attention, and I'm become very alert to what's happening. But also there's this hyper vigilant that you get on your own life, because you're living in a dangerous world, in a dangerous environment. And so, danger is constant lurking in the back of your mind. You hear people sending kites to each other. Things are being said, and, you're wondering if they're talking about you. So you become a little bit paranoid. But also, the not having contact with another human being, that does something to you. You become afraid to having too much contact with somebody. And initially coming out of isolation, I didn't want to be around people like close to my space. And things like that you deal with being isolated. And I think one of the things that really affected me was the amount of anger I had being stuck in a cell with another man and having to live like that, and then the inhumane treatment that I was being treated with at the time. The clothing that I had to wear, the food that I had to eat, no cleaning supplies to clean my cell. I had to buy shampoo from the store, or use a bar of soap to clean the inside of my cell, or use a towel that I was given to dry off with, to clean my cell with. Constantly being handcuffed anytime I left my cell. It leaves a bitter taste in your mouth towards authority. I had big authority conflict issues from being isolated. I didn't trust people. Always worrying about, people's body language, people's facial expressions. If I see them, trying to read into something, trying to perceive what their body language says. There's all kinds of things, man, that you start thinking about and start going through. And like I say, one of the most frightening things is thinking that your own friends are out to murder you. Your own gang member, associates are out to murder you for something. Like, I would go to sleep, and I always made sure, where my cellie was, if we had any weapons in the cell at that time, where they were located at. There was things that you had to be mindful of. Who had them on the tier, all of that stuff. And then you're surrounded by enemies as well, in other cells that, if the door's open, they're going to try to kill you. And likewise, you're going to try to do the same to them. So, there's a lot of that. Your life's on the line. You always got to be, on your toes. You had to be in the best shape possible, so you can survive an attack, or you'd be healthy enough to, take somebody else's life if asked to, or put in a situation like that. So living with that kind of tension and fear and anger in your body, it really, man, it's sad. especially where I'm at today. Uh, to think that you have to kill another man or you have to be worried about somebody killing you. It's a tough way to live, and it messes with you psychologically. Your sense of trust you don't really have with people. And one of the things that truly trips me out, which was a question that you asked me a while back, was any human experiences I've had in here. And I told you about one where a cop told me when I was about 19 years old, when I was in Pelican Bay, that when he opens my door that I need to get up and see what's going on, otherwise I could lose my life. That little act of kindness really touched me because you don't get that a lot from a human level. So little acts of kindness, even today in here, when somebody's kind to you, it has a big impact on you. And that's because there's not enough of it that goes around.
Thank you for answering that question. And we actually have two more. We have one other question from L Iceman, and he's asking,
Okay?
did he get a public
This
defender?
call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Can you say that again?
He's asking if you got a public defender. Did he get a public defender?
I did. I had a public defender.
And on a scale from 1 to 10, what would you rate his ability to defend you?
It's about a 6. I was a guilty man. I committed my crime. My associates were testifying against me. I don't even think a paid attorney could have got me out of prison. I mean, I was a gang member. I committed my crime. But he was I had a special prosecutor who was prosecuting me, who was a dog of a district attorney. He was really, really good. And today he's a commissioner for the board of prison terms. So he was a really good DA, and he was given all the money to prosecute me. So I think my attorney at the time, he did the best he could. But if I rated him on a scale of 1 to 10, it would be a 6.
Okay, fair enough. And then we have another question from LA analyst, and they're asking, how were you able to afford buying necessities? And I'm assuming it's while you're incarcerated. How are you able to support yourself?
So when I was in the security housing unit, my wife and her family took care of me. We were able to go to store once a month, and I think initially we could spend $35 a month, and then 10% of that had to go to the kitty, and the kitty was the essentials, the necessities for new arrivals. So 10% of that, so $7 of that 35 would be given to the kitty, and then the rest of my money I would split amongst me and whoever else needed it. So, and we weren't allowed to buy, $35 doesn't go very far. So, you were hungry most of the time. But once I got out of the security housing unit, I did all kinds of hustles in prison. I've made tattoo ink. I sold, which was good money at the time. I've sold drugs. I've sold cell phones. And the last hustle that I had is I would make whiskey, White Lightning, and I would sell White Lightning to take care of myself. I'd also, do little cards like on holidays, Halloween, Christmas, things like that. Not that I'm very artistic.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
I would make cards for people and sell them to them, things like that.
Thank you. And then I'll go ahead and hold off on the questions right now, and we'll go ahead and continue with your story. If you want to go ahead and call me back, because man, it just seems like 15 minutes is not enough, and every moment she's announcing we got 60 seconds left.
I got you, my man.
All right,
Call
perfect.
you right back right now.
We'll be waiting for you. Thank you.
All right.
And once again, I want to go ahead and thank you guys, the audience, listening to this conversation here, or interview. And you guys are really asking really good questions, and you guys are really helping me out here. So I just want to go ahead and give off a big thank you and salute to everybody that's here and taking in this conversation. So Ricky should be calling us back shortly. It shouldn't be much longer. Normally he's able to connect fairly quick, if you will. And once we connect, I'll go ahead and let him continue with his story, and then I'll follow up with the last question that we got on the screen currently.
This call is now being
This is
recorded.
Global Tel Link. You have a prepaid call from
Ricky Black.
an inmate at the Centinela State Prison, Centinela, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Okay, Ricky. Well, we're back and we are live.
Okay. So I was finishing up about how I provide myself, like financially, who takes care of me. And lastly, now that I've changed my life, I'm no longer involved with that kind of activity of making whiskey or selling drugs or doing things like that. And so now I'm in the small engines class. I'm in a vocation which doesn't pay you at all. So I don't have money. I don't make money. There's not a pay for that. And if there was, it would be 11 cents an hour, which you couldn't provide for yourself. So, I have friends that look out occasionally. They'll send a package or they'll send some money or something like that. Or, if you're lucky, you have a cellie who helps you out, and helps you get by. And currently, that's my situation.
Thank you for answering that. So you end up getting sentenced, and how long does it take for you to actually go to back to prison?
It took me a month. And it's usually it happens in like a week. They send you like on the first bus. But one of my co-defendant who testified on my behalf was actually in the reception center, and I couldn't go there until he was transferred out. So it took me like a month to go from the county jail to Wasco State Prison.
Okay, and you know what? I just saw a question. I read it, and they put it up maybe about 7 or 8 minutes ago, and I think this question pertains back to when you were in isolation, and I think it is a good question. And LA analyst is asking during isolation, as much as one needs to be on their toes, what were showers like? So did you need to be on your toes during shower time, or there what there?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Uh, so in Corcoran Shoe, when I was in even in Pelican Bay, you would walk to they would open your door and you could walk to the shower. And sometimes they would pop two doors at the same time, and if one of them was an enemy of yours, well, they could come out and potentially harm you, or you were obligated to have a physical altercation and possibly take that man's life. So that was very deadly. Uh, but there were different times in Corcoran Shoe where there was a few years there where they handcuffed us and took us to the shower. And the showers is gel bars, just like if you was to see a gel with bars. That's how the showers are set up. They're bars, and it's a locked door that's controlled by a button in the tower. And it's 5-10 minute showers, lukewarm water. The showers are usually not that clean. They kind of got a odor to them. and get a razor. I think once or twice a week. So not the best razors in the world.
Thank you for answering that, Ricky. And the same. And this is she's she's a real. She's always asking a bunch of good questions. But actually, this one she's gonna go ahead and actually she's making a comment and she's putting
Yeah.
Ricky is creative, and I'm assuming they're speaking about the way you were able to support yourself with the white lightning, and then
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
ask him for the recipe to that whiskey.
Uh,
Yeah.
yes. Do you want me to answer that?
It's totally up to you. I mean, whatever you're comfortable with.
Oh, yeah. So for us, when I made,
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I would use 60 apples, and I would crush those apples up and strain all the juice out of the 60 apples. And then I would throw what we called a kicker, and which is basically rotten apples that's fermented, and you would get that for those fermented apples, I would say about 7 fermented apples, and throw them on that juice, and I would let that juice sit for 24 hours, and that's the fermented apple pulp would start the fermentation process and the rest of that juice. And you could see it, like there's a lot of bubbles and a lot of air. And what I would do is I would get that juice and I would put it in a plastic bag and then tie the top of the bag. And you tie the top of the bag to keep the smell from the officers smelling the fumes of the rotten apples. And then I would burp that. I would open that bag up and then flush the fumes down the toilet to get rid of the smell. And after about 48 hours, I would throw what we used to use was cookie. The cream inside of cookies. 10 racks of duplex cookies would make let's say 2 gallons of wine, and pretty strong alcohol actually. And you would let that cook. You would let that cook for 72 hours. And when it was done, you would strain the pulp out of the juice, and then you had to make a stinger. And a stinger is something that you drop down into the liquid to boil it. So say some hot plates that are connected to a cord, say a fan cord or a cord to a TV. You would cut that cord and you would put metal plates on each side, on the ground and on the negative. On the ground and on the positive side of the wire. And then you would wrap the wire around it, and then you would get say plastic toothbrushes and put that between the metal plates so they wouldn't hit or touch each other. And then you would drop that cord and those metal plates down into the bag, and you would plug that cord into the wall, and then tie that cord really tight with a shoestring. You would tie the bag around the cord with a shoestring. And then you would get another bag, and you would attach it to the bag of pruno that's already been made. And you would put this connector that I would make out of deodorant stick, a round deodorant stick. I would cut the 2 ends of them off, and I would connect the 2 bags using that deodorant stick. So when the bag with the stinger in it would start cooking, and it cooks at about 220 degrees, it starts bubbling really hot, and the bag fills up with condensation, and that condensation is pushed through that connector that you put on to the other bag, and that condensation blows the plastic bag up like a balloon. And then you get your state fan and you turn it on high and you blow the bag that's filled up with air, And that what that does is the condensation that's built up in that bag, it starts running down the sides of it as the fan is cooling it off, because it's burning at 220 degrees, which is pretty hot. And so the fan cools that bag down, and it starts dripping really fast with condensation. And then you have a bowl underneath that bag, and we're able to buy quart bowls here off the canteen. Actually, they're a quart and a half. They're about a cup and a half, actually. And that bowl will or quart and a half, excuse me, will fill up with that. The 2 gallons of wine you made would make a quart of whiskey. And once that bag fills that bowl up, then you unplug the cord, pop a hole in your bag, and then drain the white lightning into your bowl. And that bowl, like I said, it's like a quart and a half. And 2 gallons of wine typically will make you a quart of whiskey. That light's on fire, by the way. So you can make a spark your light socket and light a piece of toilet paper on a fire and dip your spoon into that liquid and then touch the fire to the spoon, and that whiskey will light up in a blue flame. And that's how you know you got really good whiskey.
Thank you for providing a very detailed account on or instruction on how to make some white lightning. And
yes.
I have another question from El Iceman. He's asking, and I'm not going to say the name of the group.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
He's asking about a group. So,
go ahead.
So he's asking, did he get close to joining the? And then I'll let you fill in the blank. You know, it pertains to a white organization, and probably the biggest or the only. Yeah.
I did. I was. So at the time that I was an active gang member, you had to have 2 votes of that particular gang to sponsor you into the gang. And at the time, I had 1 vote. I needed 1 more vote to become a gang member and to be a made member into the Aryan Brotherhood. And I chose not to join. I was asked, if I wanted to, and I chose not to. And there was reasons why I chose not to. I knew the dangers of that particular gang, and one of the things that concerned me, which I never really let on and told other people, is my Native American ancestry. I'm dark. If you just see me, I'm dark. Today I have long hair, but my skin color isn't white. It's not fair. I have dark skin, and I was, one of the concerns I had was that somebody at some point would say, hey, and a lot of times I'm confused as a Hispanic. Most people think when they initially see me that I might be Hispanic because of my skin tone. And I thought that might play a role in my demise at some point by other gang members, that, hey, this guy, he's a mixed blood. Why is he, why is he in the gang? Who sponsored this guy? So that was always a concern of mine. That's something that I've dealt with my entire life. Being in a white gang and being of a different color skin and a different nationality, something that I always had to deal with. And that was a concern of mine, and ultimately I chose not to join the AB for that reason.
Thank you. I do appreciate you answering that question there. And we've been on these calls so far for about an hour and a half now, and I know she should be getting ready to announce that 60 second mark.
Yeah.
So I think for now, we got through a lot of your story, and we're gonna go ahead and leave it off here.
All right.
But we're definitely gonna have you back, and I'm pretty sure that we do have a listener count of 7 right now, which is it's slowly growing day by day. First we started off with 1 and 0, and slowly we're inching away and getting some
Awesome.
listeners. So I just wanted to go ahead and share that news with you, and I really appreciate you guys, taking the time out of your day and taking these calls or making these calls and participating with our audience. Truly, I mean, I wouldn't be able to uh, have this podcast on YouTube without you guys, because you guys are ultimately the ones with the stories. My stories would only go through through the juvenile hall system
You have
camp,
60 seconds remaining.
through juvenile system, through camp, and a little bit of county time. So, you guys are providing the content here, and hopefully you guys are able to influence any young people out there that are thinking about going down this path, and kind of giving them the heads up before they go down that path. So I'm going to cut the stream now for our listeners here, and just stay tuned. And if you're not subscribed, please do so, and you'll be up to date on our latest live streams. And Ricky, if you could go ahead and give me a call back, so we could just go ahead and talk a little bit before our next conversation.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. And I'll be waiting.
Okay, my man.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And to our audience, good. Hope you guys have a good night, and we should be going live either, if not tomorrow, the following day. But I'll try to post it up on the community board to give you guys a heads up when we are going live. The only thing with I'm a little bit hesitant on posting something up on the community board, just in case I'm not able to or a guest here is not able to make a phone call. And like yesterday, I ended up going online or live a little bit later than I had originally posted, but just to, obviously these gentlemen are in prison, and sometimes they can't get to the phone, as they desire. They have other things going on, so just keep that in mind. And with that being said, I'll go ahead and wish you guys a good night, and thank you for tuning in, and have a good night.